Torah Life Ministries come out of the world. Messiah people seek the truth.
Hello everybody, this is Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries. Thank you for joining us for this week's Torah teaching. And we're up to the 17th teaching of the year, which is Exodus 18:1 to 20:23. And it's known as Jethro because that was the father-in-law of Moses. And we're going to see this week in this teaching exactly when the children of Israel were in the desert. Some wise advice by Moses' father-in-law that I personally use in my life that has really blessed me, and it can bless you as well. Because stress is such an important part of disease today, and it goes hand in hand, and we need to find ways to avoid stress as much as possible. We see here in this week's teaching in Exodus 18:17, Moses' father-in-law said to him, "What are you doing? It isn't good. You will certainly wear yourself out." See, what was happening was Moses was trying to be the judge and handle every single issue that was happening to the children in the desert. But his father-in-law said, you need help. Let everyone else deal with the average daily issues. And if they can't come to a conclusion, or if it's a major issue, then you can step in. It was very wise advice that Moses finally listened to. And he said, pick some good men and to do that. And then we go on to a really important part. And we're going to end off this week with an amazing part. But he says in Exodus 19:4, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you will pay careful attention to what I say and keep my covenant, then you will be my own treasure from among the peoples. Well, we talk about metaphors in the scriptures and people just not understanding different languages and different terminology. And we see this thing, if I never read the scriptures and if I didn't know English or didn't know much, when you see here, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I carried you out on eagle's wings. I'd be looking for eagles flying in the air with people on it. But that's not what it says. It says he took them and he protected them and he got them out away from the slavery. And if we follow his covenant, the promise that he made with the forefathers, we will be his people. And as his people, that blessing will continue. He will continue to bless us. But if we break that promise, if we break that covenant, we're on our own. And the people heard this and they saw. They absolutely saw him carry them out and get them out and free them. And as we saw last week, the sea was divided and so on. So what did the people say? The people said, it says in Exodus 19:8, all the people answered as one, everything our wonderful Creator says, we will do. Now we already discussed that Moses is the mouthpiece. And Moses was the mouthpiece of Yahweh telling them what to do. And it wasn't coming from Moses. It was coming from a wonderful Creator. But the people continued to bicker and bicker and bicker. They broke their promise because it says everything that he said to do, we will do. But they didn't do it. They didn't do it, and it led to them wandering around for 40 years. And none of them, they came out of the slavery of Egypt, crossing over to the Jordan to go into the promised land because they did not keep their promise. And what is that covenant? Well, that covenant consisted of many, many guidelines and statutes and commands. But it was summed up in 10 commands, and that's what we get this week, the summing up of the 10 commandments. And if you're a believer in Messiah, I laugh when a lot of Christians tell me, well, we can't keep all of the commandments. You're right. There's 613 commandments. You can't keep all the commandments. Many of those commandments were attached to the temple that's no longer even there. So even if you tried and wanted to, it's impossible to keep them. However, summing up the 10 commandments, you absolutely can keep the 10 commandments. It's 10 of 613. And he's asking us to just keep these 10 here. And when I see people that say, oh, we can't, or we don't even try, or we don't have to, well, why do he give it to us if we don't have to? He wants us to. And he summed them up perfectly in these 10 commandments here. And when we look at the 10 commandments and open up your Bible and go to Exodus 20, it's what Messiah taught from about the commandments. It says, obey my commands. Displaying grace to thousands, generations of those who love me and obey my commands. It's not difficult, folks. The commands are there for us, to keep us safe, to keep us on his path, to give us a guideline to know when we're messing up and not messing up. We're only saved through the blood of Messiah. But if we're truly saved, we should have every desire to follow his guidelines and instructions. This is what we need to understand. Now, I know many people today understand about moral laws and morality, and if you're a believer, you might strive to keep the commands such as, don't murder or commit adultery or don't steal or give false evidence against your neighbor. But what about the first commands? About having no other gods or idols before me? What about not taking his name in vain? And what about keeping the Sabbath as a set-apart day? These are things that, I'm sad to say, many Christians and so-called believers aren't following. And they have no desire to do so. And this is why we get ourselves in trouble. And this is why the children in the desert got themselves in trouble. At Torah Life Ministries, we teach about health and modesty. We also teach about obedience to our Creator's guidelines and instructions. But we look at a very interesting issue here at the end here when it comes to the issue of modesty, which is part of the guidelines and instructions, is to live a modest life, and not modest based on what we think is best, but what's modest based on his words and the blessings that come along with paying attention and listening to his words. And over in the scriptures, it connects indecent exposure or nakedness with shame. But today, people look at nakedness and they take pride in their nakedness. They go to work out so they get a nice body so they can walk around naked and show it off. No, the scriptures associate nakedness with shame, and nakedness in public. And we see here in the end of this week's reading in Exodus 20:23, it says, likewise, you are not to use steps to go to my altar so that you won't be indecently uncovered. This was a command given to the priests of Israel when they went up to the temple, that they were not to go up to the steps so their nakedness would be exposed. Over and over again, the scriptures lay out the guidelines for what modest really is and what modesty really is. Shorts and pants were designed to be underpants or undershorts. It wasn't designed that people could walk outside in the world there just showing off their legs. No. They wore tunics, they covered their legs, and they had shorts under them or pants under them. But today, this world is so far from the guidelines and instructions our Creator wanted us to live by, and the guidelines and the warnings he gave us to avoid. And when it comes to modesty, that's the farthest area we've come from. And what happens when there's a lot of people walking around doing the same thing, people just start accepting it as normal. It was once considered crazy when it first happened, but then people, first they reject it, then they accept it, then they become part of it. And now people are walking around all over the world indecently exposed. And when you got people telling people that it's wrong and it's not right, they're the ones that are ridiculed. Well, just go to the church today and look around. You see women in high heels and tight pants. You see men in high heels and tight pants. How bad is it going to get? That's what we got today, folks. You need to get back to the guidelines and instructions of our Creator if you do want to be blessed. And the children of Israel wandering around in the desert, wandering around like chickens with their heads cut off because they weren't following his guidelines and instruction. Their heart wasn't in the right place. In Jeremiah it says we're given a new covenant. And just like the original covenant, we're not to break it. We're to keep his covenant, so we're blessed. And that new covenant doesn't replace the original covenant. It says that original covenant is so important, I'm going to repolish that up and I'm going to put it on your heart so you remember it always. And that is what Messiah taught us. So that's what we need to remember. If you have any comments or questions, post them below the video. And we do the Torah portion readings and other Bible teachings here at Torah Life Ministries just about every single day on our website, healthwatchman.com. And you could also go to our YouTube channel by the same name, The Health Watchman, and check them out. Everybody, have a great Shabbat next week. Until then, shalom, shalom.
Torah Life Ministries come out of the world. Messiah people seek the truth.